sly little elf and you should be sitting under your own private little toadstool.
Welcome to episode 45 of the Columbo podcast, where we are both sly and elf-like, but unfortunately don't have our own private toadstools.
Do you like a good toadstool?
Great. That's like Alice in Wonderland. Or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Do you have a toadstool?
Don't know. Inside they've got all these things made out of sweets and candies. Is there not a chocolate river and a toadstool made out of marshmallow?
It's entirely possible.
Probably. That was a bit weird.
The whole movie was a bit weird.
It was. However, we've went off at a tangent straight away here. How are we, Ian?
Very well.
Good. What did you think generally of this week's episode, Prescription Murder?
Thought it was very good, very slick, much more together than you would expect for an early episode.
Yeah. Must admit, I have not watched this one as often as the other episodes, and not for a while actually. And I forgot how good it was. How, as you say, how sort of well formed the initial episode was.
It's not trying to be too clever,
no.
Like some of the episodes do. It's not trying to trick us, which some of them frustrate us by doing. But it's been a decent basis to build the series from.
Yes, it certainly has. Well, we talk a little bit about the background of the show and the genesis of where it...
Well, we should. I mean, I've obviously not watched it before now, but I've kind of picked up a little bit in conversation on the blog, on Twitter and so on, people unhappy with it being referred to as a pilot and so on.
Yes.
So it'd be good to get some more information.
Yeah, it's not what you would class as a typical pilot. This was, as you're probably aware, broadcast a good 3 years before Ransom for a Dead Man.
Which itself was prior to the series.
Yes. Yeah, Ransom was the official pilot, which was shortly followed by Murder by the Book.
Yeah.
But Prescription Murder itself is the third incarnation of Columbo.
Okay.
So, we have to go back 8 years prior. And what happened was, in 1960, there was a TV show which had, I think, 18 episodes, just one season. It was the Chevy Mystery Show. And one of the episodes was entitled Enough Rope.
Okay.
Which was effectively the same plot, the same storyline as Prescription Murder.
Yeah, you understand it's a play on Enough Rope to Hang Himself, I should presume.
It starred Bert Freed, I've mentioned him before, as Columbo, Lieutenant Columbo. And it aired on the 31st of January 1960.
Okay.
So we're talking a good 8 years before Prescription Murder, and a good, 11 years before Murder by the Book.
So was that a Lincoln Levison?
Yes.
So presumably this character then has just kind of taken root?
It has. What happened was, after the success, I think it was well received, Enough Rope, Lincoln Levison then produced were involved with a stage play.
Okay.
And the stage play was called Prescription Murder.
Same as this episode we've just watched.
Yes. It starred Thomas Mitchell and opened at the Curran Theatre in San Francisco on the 15th of January 1962. And it closed at the Schubert in Boston on May the 26th, 1962. So it ran for a few months. Mitchell, who starred as Columbo, had quite an incredible acting career. In 1939 alone, he starred in Gone with the Wind, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, It's a Wonderful Life, Only Angels Have Wings, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and High Noon.
That's a run of high-profile, successful movies.
In 1 year. But what happened was that they noticed that in both the original TV show, the Chevy Mystery Show, and on the stage, the murderer was meant to be the star. But the cop, this self-effacing, quiet, but persistent detective, was stealing the show. And from there, the idea developed. But they had no intention immediately of, it wasn't meant to be a pilot for a TV show. That's why it took another 3 years.
Yeah.
Or it took another 3 years from Prescription Murder to become a TV show.
That's quite interesting. I think it's interesting as well, the way you describe Columbo, the way he's meant to be, is a lot closer to how he ended up being than Falk portrays him in this TV movie.
Yes. Although the signs are there.
Yeah, no, there's elements of it, but I just think, he's more brusque and kind of abrasive.
Yeah.
We'll get to it, but...
He also wears a pair of suede hush puppy shoes, not his normal desert boots.
Yeah, it's not quite nailed everything the way it eventually came to be, but by the time you get to the next pilot, I think he's maybe taken notes.
Yeah, I think they've refined or they've honed in on what they want.
From his performance,
Yes.
because I think they already know from what you're saying what they want the character to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And this as well, we often talk about the sort of 70s for many, many reasons in this podcast and with regards to the show, but this does have the feel of the 60s about it. Right from the very start, the score, sort of psychedelic graphics that we open with.
Yeah. Those are reminded me of the sound waves in Make Me a Perfect Murder.
Yeah, they were certainly of that quality which might not be as highly regarded today.
Although I presume it's because they were psychiatrists' prints. You know, what do you see? Is it a duck or a butterfly?
Ink spots. Yeah, that type of stuff, yeah. You really loved your mother or your father didn't love you, that type of stuff. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was meant to represent. I thought this episode also had similarities to Suitable for Framing and Deadly State of Mind.
Did you?
Yes.
I suppose, yes, with the Deadly State of Mind, I can see with the psychiatrist and the mind control-y type work that he was doing in a patient. Similar. Yeah, I get that. Why do you think it's similar to Suitable for Framing?
Because of the murder. If you remember, Dale Kingston killed his uncle but used a female accomplice.
Of course, it was almost exactly the same setup.
Yep, and in that episode she ends up being killed by Kingston, which may very well have happened to her in this.
Yeah, I mean, we saw from Ransom for a Dead Man that they went on to borrow from the pilot.
Yeah.
So they've maybe done the same sort of thing here with, I mean, you can see other elements that carry through as well.
Sure. I also think that we've got the sort of prototypical murderer already in place here.
Absolutely.
I think that Dr. Ray Fleming has got all the traits that you look for, or certainly I look for. So he's charming, he's powerful, he's rich, but he's conceited. He believes that, initially, that Columbo is below him.
He definitely does. And he's not the only one that thinks that.
Yeah.
His friends and the social set, as it were.
Anyway, we've been chatting for quite some time already. Do you fancy cracking on with this week's episode?
Yeah, we'll give it the shot at the summary.
Go for it.
In Prescription Murder, we meet Dr. Ray Fleming, a psychiatrist with an overbearing wife who sees no way to escape his loveless marriage without loss of reputation and status, perhaps even the loss of his career. Such is his wife's determination to leave him with nothing if she cannot have the marriage she wants. Turning to murder, Dr. Fleming enters a relationship with Joan Hudson, a young actress who he persuades to help him craft the perfect alibi. Her loyalty secures his freedom and must be maintained. With a young and aggressive Lieutenant Columbo on the case, will the Doctor's plan succeed, or will his mind games backfire?
Thank you, Ian. We start, as we mentioned, with those graphics, which are just odd now, I think, to look at when you're not used to Columbo opening in that manner.
You get mood-setting music as well, and it's not titled Columbo.
No. What is it titled?
It's just Prescription Murder,
Yes.
a TV movie from a play by Lincoln Levinson.
That's it. So it's not a Columbo episode here. It is a TV movie.
It does say starring Peter Falk, though, so obviously he is the headliner.
Yeah, he's a big name. And we start in a penthouse apartment.
It's night time in the city.
It is. There's a dinner party underway. We see the guests are dressed to the nines.
Playing party games?
Yes. We see a man who we come to know as Dr. Ray Fleming.
Yeah.
He's playing this game.
He is.
What is it? It's a sort of
They call
guess.
it Botticelli,
Is
where
that-
you think of a famous person and the others have to guess using only yes or no
Is
questions.
he not a blind opera singer?
No, that's Bocelli.
Oh.
You're thinking of who was not around at that time.
He wasn't. Well, he might have been around.
He was not high profile at that time.
No, yeah, okay. Yeah, it's based on a series of sort of questions you're trying to figure out who's who.
Yeah. Maybe you might call it 20 questions. Some people
Yeah.
play that variety of it.
And involved in this game is an attorney, a chap called Burt.
Burt Gordon,
Burt Gordon and his wife. we
presumably
think.
a relative of Jim Gordon from Gotham.
Mm-hmm. And we discover that Fleming is a psychiatrist.
He is, and it's his party.
It is. A very palatial apartment they have there in the penthouse.
It's very nice indeed.
They've actually got a full-size bar.
It's a bit like your house.
Yeah, apart from the full-size bar, I've only got one of those sort of a semicircle bar.
Does it not swing out when you press the button?
It does. You should see the bedroom. Fleming's wife then dims the light, and she brings out a 10-year anniversary cake.
She's prepared this for herself.
She's had someone prepare it for her, yes.
Yeah, but it's on her own initiative, and she's not been gifted this by any of the guests. It's a case of she's arranged her own party and her own cake.
She has.
And champagne to go with it.
And she'll cry if she wants to. And then they have this cake and they toast their friends and what have you, toast them. And while this is going on, the phone rings and Fleming answers.
Yes.
Apparently, it's an emergency with a patient
who's having an anxiety attack.
Mm-hmm.
But his wife is not content with that explanation.
She's not happy. However, he leaves. He tells her that he'll be back in time before the guests.
Yeah, she says, "We have guests. I won't allow you to leave." And he ignores her. In fact, he's made his mind up.
Yeah, I'm not sure again how on call a psychiatrist would actually be.
No, I think you can sympathise with both of them here to an extent,
Really?
Because from his perspective, you might say, "Well, you should trust me. I'm your husband, and I'm telling you this is what I'm doing." From her point of view, she knows he's been unfaithful in the past, and this is the type of thing you might do.
Yeah, we find out later that they both know that they both know.
Yeah.
We leave Fleming's apartment and we head over to Joan Hudson's apartment.
Also very nice.
It's very, very nice. Did you recognise it?
It did have a familiar look. I couldn't tell you exactly where I saw it.
Okay, maybe not inside, but the pool that
was particularly what I thought of, the pool.
Yes, that was the pool where Robert Culp, dressed as an ice cream seller, killed Dean Stockwell in the most crucial game.
I thought that pool was bigger.
That's just the tricks of Hollywood, Ian.
Angles and lighting.
That's all it is. Yep, same pool, same location.
There you go.
So we're in this very nice apartment. And rather than the emergency that he told his wife Carol that he was going to attend, he is in fact meeting this Joan Hudson.
Yep, it's a rendezvous.
Yeah, they apparently love each other very much.
So they say.
She was a patient and she is a bit part actress. And we find out that they have some sort of plan that they're going to implement the following evening.
Yeah, they talk about finding some other way, and he asks if she has cold feet. So presumably it's something major, and I assume from the nature of the show, murder.
Yeah, you'd like to think so in this situation.
I did wonder, as a jobbing bit part actress, how she could afford that apartment.
Yes, I presumed or assumed that perhaps he is somehow financing it.
It's possible.
Or has she had other lovers in the movie industry?
The other thing I thought was maybe if she's on a production, maybe they're provided accommodation while they're on that, but it seems awfully grandiose.
I wouldn't have thought. The star might have got that,
yeah,
but a bit part I don't think at all. We get the feeling that she's less sure about what they're doing. He's certainly leading this plan.
Yeah, but she promises, she says she won't disappoint him, and he says he never thought she would. But I think it's clear that she has genuine anxiety issues.
Oh, yes.
It's not been a fake story completely.
I believe that she met him through being a patient in the first place.
Yeah, and she probably still suffers to some extent because she does seem very nervous.
I get the feeling without a doubt that she's quite a fragile person.
Yeah.
And he's obviously that, which makes it worse. He's taking advantage of her.
Yeah, I think he's using that to his advantage, absolutely. He is manipulating her based on what he knows she can handle and can't handle, I suppose.
We return to Fleming's penthouse and we see Carol, his wife. She's pacing and waiting.
Yeah, she's clearly waiting up for him because the guests have gone and the lights are down.
He arrives back and she's got some bad news for him.
Yeah, he's going to the guest room.
And more.
She's on to him. That's why he's going to the guest room.
Oh yeah, he's certainly going to the guest room, but what else? She's got more news than just that.
She's calling her lawyers in the morning.
Yeah. Apparently she discovered around 6 months ago about his affair and they had some sort of agreement or discussion and he promised to end it and be faithful. Yeah,
she's going to give terms that they agreed to. It doesn't sound like the kind of agreement that he would have entered into willingly.
No. Let's take a listen.
Don't bother to undress. You're sleeping in the guest room. I've turned down the bed.
Carol.
I think you should know I'm calling my lawyers in the morning.
It's been a long day. Do we have to start on that again?
You'll have to indulge me just this one last time, dearie. It's lucky for you I'm too well-bred to throw a tantrum.
All right. Fire away.
6 months ago, I gave you a choice between me and your... how shall I put it? Extracurricular activity.
I made that choice.
I wanted a husband in fact, not just in appearance. If you refused, I'd divorce you.
There was a catch to that, as I recall.
Well, naturally, you don't think I'm going to make it easy for you. I'd create as much scandal as I possibly could and ruin your practice entirely.
Aside from taking every penny that I've got.
Those were my terms. You accepted them.
Like I say, I don't think those are terms that he felt he had a position to negotiate. Nor does it sound like he took his promise very seriously.
No, I don't think he did. It's strange because she obviously knows what's going on, but yet she's easily fobbed off with another excuse.
Well, he tries one excuse which she doesn't buy.
Mm-hmm.
He says he was at a patient and then he stopped by the referring psychoanalyst, a fellow called Cobb, on the way home and tells her to call him. And she says she doesn't know Cobb, but she knows he says, you know, his wife, and she goes to call.
She calls his bluff.
Yeah, absolutely she does.
And what does he do?
He says, put the phone down, I've not seen him for 2 weeks.
I'm lying. But he has another lie.
He backs up his lie with a second lie. He's been planning a surprise trip to Acapulco.
Yeah, and she believes this.
Well, I suspect he has been planning a surprise trip to Acapulco, but not for her.
Yes, but do you think that she just wants to believe this? You know, that she's quite happy to immediately take his word for it, or deep down do you think, oh.
She seemed unusually happy. It seemed to me she was kidding herself.
Yeah, because, hey, listen, a trip to Acapulco is nice, but you get the feeling that they are extremely wealthy. And it seemed a bit of an overreaction, you know, a short trip away. I would have thought people in their position would be on regular trips to these places, but she seemed absolutely delighted about this trip. But it's not even a trip, you know, from perhaps the States to Europe, which is a bigger deal back in the 60s or wherever. It's to Mexico. And it doesn't seem like a trip would be that rare for someone with their, or a couple with their quite obvious wealth.
Yeah, it's not made clear where this episode takes place, because obviously the main show was in Los Angeles, but Columbo is very New York. He's in this episode.
In this episode, he is very much a New York cop, and I think Lincoln Levinson have both admitted that it isn't discussed in the show, but he is a New York cop.
But is the show in New York? Is this
no,
episode in New York?
I don't think so.
I'm sure I read somewhere that the play was meant to take place in New York.
Yeah, look at the weather. Look at the movies in that she's a starlet in Hollywood.
I got that wrong then. That would make sense. It would be Hollywood, LA, so trip to Mexico's nothing.
No, again, not for someone with, you know, who are obviously very well off, but she seems to, a couple of days trip seems to make her forget that her husband, a moment ago she thought her husband was cheating on her with someone who he has previously cheated.
Yeah, and not only that, she's just called his bluff on one lie.
Yeah.
But she's prepared to accept this without any kind of proof or support.
Anyway, we then have a cheeky little scene. She wants, how will I put this? She wants some intimate time with him.
Yes.
And we see his sort of, he almost mugs to the camera. He doesn't, but he turns round and...
It's like he pulls his collar and steam comes out.
As if to say, twice in the same night at my age. But there we go.
It's quite interesting the fact that she was putting him out to the spare room, but she made the bed for him.
Yeah.
She's a very domestic lady.
Did you enjoy the performance of Carol Fleming?
That's a hard question. I thought it was a little bit of a caricature.
Really?
A little bit of a nagging wife.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
It seemed to be the role, so yeah, performance is probably okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I suppose she's allowed to nag if she has previously known that her husband has been cheating.
It's one of these tricky ones, isn't it? At what point, you know, the fact that she's deciding to stay with him knowing this is what he does, at what point does she have to stop moaning about it? I don't know.
Yeah. She was played by Nina Foch. She died in 2008, aged 84. She was in Spartacus, The Ten Commandments, An American in Paris. She's also been in Murder, She Wrote, Lou Grant and I Spy. She was Oscar nominated in 1955 for Executive Suite, and she has a star on the Walk of Fame.
Accomplished.
Very.
It does seem that everyone's got a star on the Walk of Fame, though.
There are thousands of them.
Yeah. Like the dog out of Neighbours. So you got a star in the Hollywood Walk of
He's
Fame.
got 2. One for best leading role and one for best dog in a supporting.
Best chase scene.
Best chase. Yeah. Okay, we go from the penthouse to Fleming's office.
Yes, his psychiatry practice.
Mm-hmm. Joan is shown in. She's wearing a very, very tight green dress, and they kiss.
Yep, today's the day.
Yes. They run through their plan. She's going to dress up to look like Carol, and then she will arrive by bus at his apartment at 9 p.m.
Prescribed time.
Again, she has to be assured by him that things will be okay.
She's very anxious.
Very. If I was him, I'm not sure how confident I would be that she can, firstly, pull this off, but then secondly, maintain the pressure of the cops.
Absolutely. Although he maybe felt there would not be any suspicion.
Yeah, I suppose that is his thinking, isn't it? She then leaves and he tries on his murderer's gloves.
Yeah, just to see how they fit.
It's always good to see a murderer put a pair of gloves on and clench the fist.
Can I get a good choke out through these?
Yeah. We head back to Fleming's home. Carol's in good spirits.
But would you believe it? She can't find the one dress that he's picked out for Joan to wear.
We also find out that Carol came from a wealthy family.
Yes, he married her for her money. Yeah, that made me think of A Friend Indeed, where the commissioner's married the wealthy woman and, you know, she's controlling the purse strings a wee bit.
Also reminded me of Playback, where, I can't remember his name now, but Oscar
Werner.
Yes, he married into a rich family and his wife was in the wheelchair.
He did. He got occupation out of it, didn't he?
He did. It's not mentioned, but is part of his motive to inherit her family wealth?
It's not mentioned. I think his primary motive is just to be rid of her.
Yeah, it often seems for someone who is so cold and calculating, as we hear at the end of the episode, so that he was murdering his wife just for... Why would...
No, but I think it's because he would have divorced her, but she was going to ruin him, so it's to protect his career.
Even back in '68, how much of a ruination could that be? So you're a psychiatrist. Now, fair enough if you're a priest, but a psychiatrist who divorces his wife and has an affair with a Hollywood starlet.
Yeah, but
would that ruin... I'm not going to go and see that psychiatrist because he is split up from his wife.
But remember they're friends with, like, the, you know, DA or
I suppose.
whoever else. It could be hassle.
It just does seem... It's a bit like Dick Van Dyke in Negative Reaction.
Perhaps. But if you imagine that all the friends at the party were her friends and not his, then perhaps there are connections there that would be difficult for him to overcome.
Possibly.
And that certainly makes sense if it was her money, if she's the one that's been moving in those circles previously.
Fleming then asks if the maid is coming the next day, and Carol phones to confirm. Then we have a very tense build-up to the murder.
Definitely.
He puts on his gloves and he walks through. Again, she's in what's really the sort of the contrast, the juxtaposition is she's now in great spirits. She's so happy, and you feel really bad for her because she thinks she's going on this trip with her husband who loves her, or they're going to repair the marriage.
She's very excited about the trip, and they have a good chat about it, and he's not really participating properly in the chat, but it doesn't seem to deter her.
No. And then we have a false start. He goes to strangle her and she turns around and he has to take a step back, and the tension builds even more. Yeah,
he doesn't want to do it to her face.
No.
You could just have kept joking her there.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to look at her while he's doing it.
You wouldn't want to. I mean, if I was, when I strangle my wife, I don't want to look at her in the eyes.
If I were to commit a murder.
If I were to, that would put me off. As she goes to close the curtains, he pounces.
He does.
And it's an even longer strangulation death scene than you normally see in these TV shows.
Yeah.
Quite protracted.
And the phone's ringing while he's doing it.
It is.
You wonder if it's going to save her, you think? Is he going to let go?
Yes. So this creates more tension because he's trying to kill her. The phone's ringing and you see a great close-up shot a few times. It cuts to his face and the perspiration and the sweat is building on his forehead. So I thought, it's a really powerful and a well-done scene, especially for 1968.
Absolutely. And then, having killed her, he takes the call.
Yes, he does. And it's Burt Gordon wishing them a trip.
Yeah, safe trip. Yeah. I say once he's killed, he's not actually killed her, but we'll come back to that.
I thought this was going to play a bigger part in the sort of clues and the gotcha, but it didn't really.
No.
I think it was just to create that tension during the killing.
Could have been.
He then fakes a break-in, doesn't he?
Yeah, he smashes the sort of patio door and he removes her jewellery.
Mm-hmm.
He takes silver, like there's cutlery and other bits and pieces of silver.
It's a bit weird, isn't it, now? It's very old-fashioned, isn't it? You know, now in 2015, thinking about a thief coming in and stealing knives and forks and things like that. It's not worth the hassle, is it?
Yeah,
really?
no, I think if I was a burglar in 2015, I would not be looking for precious cutlery or candle or whatever else.
The items he takes, he places into a suitcase.
He does. He's taking it on holiday with him.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. The other thing was that this is a penthouse.
Yeah.
And it's an outside break-in.
On the top floor.
The top floor. It's quite a... Yeah, you'd have to be very skilled to get up there to break in at that level.
Probably more like to come down from the roof than to come up.
Yeah, still, how do you get onto the roof? If you can get onto the roof, it's climbing up the outside. Because if you can get onto the roof from inside, then you're inside, then you can get up. It just seems very odd. And then what are you going to do? You're going to shimmy down, abseil. I suppose you could walk back down once you're in, couldn't you?
Yeah.
But with candle holders and all sorts, it doesn't ring true, that. Anyway.
Doesn't come up.
It doesn't come up, no. Doorbell goes. Who is it?
It's Joan. She's arrived at the appointed hour.
And again, like suitable for framing, she recoils as she actually faces the body. So they've planned this out, but the reality of it hits when she looks and sees Carol lying there dead, and she can't face it.
No, she has to look the other way.
Mm-hmm. She then starts to dress like Carol as Fleming continues to make it look like a robbery. He goes into the bedroom, and it's separate beds here, single beds.
Yep.
And he makes it look like one bed, Carol's bed, has been slept in.
Yeah, he punches the pillow and ruffles the sheets.
Joan then calls the cleaners and orders laundry to be picked up from outside the front door in the morning.
Yep, and then they go to leave and they've forgotten that there's a rag on the phone handle.
Yes, I thought this was a very nice touch. So we didn't mention, but when Joan called the cleaners, Fleming gave her a handkerchief.
Yeah.
And that was left on the phone, and they both go out, and then the lights are turned off, and the camera focuses on this handkerchief that's been left behind, and we think, that's going to get him. But no, he pops back in and removes it.
That's it.
So we're now at LA Airport.
I guess so, LAX.
Mm-hmm. They check in as Dr. and Mrs. Fleming, and they board the plane.
Yep.
What do they do on the plane?
They take their seats and they have a wee chat, and then tempers flare.
Mm-hmm. They fake an argument.
Essentially.
In order to allow Joan as Carol to storm off.
Yeah, she's not sure how to do this, and she's told, you're an actress, get on with it.
Yeah. One of the stewardesses, I can't remember her name, but she was at one time the wife of George Peppard.
Who we saw, we haven't seen,
no,
but who we know from the A-Team.
Yes, Hannibal. I thought I'd throw that in there. So she has left and she goes back to the Fleming's apartment and she puts the dress into the laundry sack outside.
See, I've written she adds the dress and gloves to the laundry, but obviously I've seen that.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
She doesn't put the gloves in the laundry.
No, she doesn't. With a quick scene in Acapulco.
This was some of the best green screen work since Columbo last drove a car.
Describe what happens.
It's sunny, and we get sunny. The word Acapulco comes up, looking bright and shiny.
Uh-huh.
We get a really bad green screen scene of Ray and Miguel out fishing, and he sends Miguel back to make a sandwich and chucks all the silver over the side of the boat. It was almost comical.
How do you go on a fishing trip with Miguel with a suitcase full of candelabras and cutlery?
Yeah.
I mean, you must. Surely Miguel says, Dr. Fleming, why do you have this suitcase here? And then as it's not an ocean liner. So as he's just like a few yards away preparing lunch or whatever he's doing, he hears like a cutlery drawer being opened up and it's or chinking as he pours it into the ocean. Not just that, that's by the time he gets to on the boat in Acapulco.
Yeah.
But why did he not just dump it in like a river or some place in California, in a bin in California? I thought that was ridiculous. He's taking this cutlery to him on the plane.
You can imagine Miguel hearing it and saying, "Is everything okay, Dr. Fleming?" He's going, "Yep, nothing happening here."
I'm just preparing a knife and fork. You know, I'm very sophisticated, Miguel. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm not eating with my fingers. I've got a knife and fork with me. But yeah, so why did he feel the need to board a plane with the contents of a dining room table?
I don't know. And even having got them to Acapulco, there must have been an easier way.
Yeah.
But anyway, he gets away with it. So
He does get away with it.
who's the fool now?
Yeah, who's the damn fool? So we return to Fleming's apartment.
Yeah, this is the holiday's over and this is him on his way back.
Yeah, he's carrying 2 suitcases.
It's a rather bizarre moment where nobody's told him that his wife's been murdered.
Well, that's picked up on later. They mentioned that he couldn't be contacted, and he says, yeah, I was in a very sort of remote little village somewhere.
Yeah, but there's nothing stopping him getting up and into the crime scene.
Yeah, you would think that...
A guy in the door or a tape.
Yeah, definitely. Because they would have talked to his friends like Bert, who would have said, yeah, they're away for 3 days.
Yeah.
So in fact, the cops would actually have known the exact point, you know, when they were coming back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose that's a little, no.
They met him at the airport or left a message at the airport for when he was coming.
Yeah, you wouldn't have let him walk back into the room and sees.
Seems harsh.
Very harsh.
But he sees a sort of a chalk outline done with tape, and the windows boarded up, and then you hear kind of Pink Panther-esque music,
Yeah.
and it heralds the arrival of the lieutenant.
It does. So Fleming has not screamed out. He's not gasped in shock. He's just glanced at it, then looked out of the window. And as you say, this means that Columbo can make his appearance. What was your initial impression? So you went from, 1979
Yep.
to 1968. How much of a change have you seen here?
The big thing that hit me was his accent.
Okay.
It sounded very New York, and I wondered, was it an exaggeration of his own accent, or was it just that was his voice and he's been covering it up during the other
Yeah.
episodes? I wasn't sure. Because obviously there's Peter Falk's from New York as well.
His age, did you not think he looked remarkable?
Well, he looked younger, but not... His hair was a bigger issue than his face, I would say, in terms of the way he looked.
Yeah, it was more well kept and shorter.
Yeah, but by the time you get to season 7 of the original series, he was starting to look a bit tidier than he had in earlier seasons.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as big a jump as it would have been from, say, season 3 or 4 when his hair was all over the place.
But it's also quite smartly dressed. I mean, he's got his raincoat, but it looks like a new raincoat.
He doesn't wear it.
Nope, it's over his arm as you would do. You wouldn't wear this.
Yeah, it's constantly over his arm. He never wears it.
Yep, he's wearing a smart suit, tie buttoned up.
Yep, and it's the same kind of suit that he manages to make look slovenly. And I wouldn't be surprised then if it was the exact same suit as he eventually is seen wearing under his coat.
Have you been looking at my notes, Ian?
No.
My trivia?
No, I haven't, but I do remember the brown suit that he's worn in the past.
Okay.
Or the future, from this perspective.
Yeah. He wore, apart from the shoes, he wore the same suit, shoes and raincoat for all 45 episodes, and they were all, in fact, Peter Falk's very own.
There you go. So
I think
these are the ones.
45 episodes up to this point, and I think he probably continued, certainly with the raincoat, the jacket.
Yep.
What are Columbo's first words?
I don't know.
He IDs himself, and his first words, or Columbo's first words, are Dr. Fleming.
I presume.
Yeah.
I would have guessed if you'd pushed me on it, that would be my guess.
Fleming wants to know what happened to his wife, and Columbo delivers the news. Someone has tried to kill her.
Yes. To Fleming's credit, he doesn't look crestfallen or shocked by this.
No.
Beyond what you would expect from someone being told their wife had been attacked.
Yes. So this sort of scuppers his plans to an extent, doesn't it? His wife is not dead.
Well, it potentially could scupper his plans if she can identify him.
And just then, the phone rings. Who is it?
Well, annoyingly for Ray Fleming, it's Joan who he has specifically, we didn't mention this, he has specifically instructed not to contact him.
Yes, but she does make an excuse for this later.
She says, yes, she knew that Carol had survived and wanted to
warn him. Mm-hmm. But still, she should not have been making contact.
No. He covers it up in the way he has been accustomed to covering up his phone calls from her.
He pretends it's a patient and tells the patient that he will see them at 2 p.m. on Friday, and then he hangs up.
Yeah. Columbo has told him that his wife's in a coma.
Yes.
And so he now demands to see her.
They go to the hospital.
Well, Columbo asks if he's sure.
Yes, this is really odd. It's like, do you want a drink or something? It's like, no. Right now, you should as soon as I entered this this room used to have arranged for a cop car to be downstairs and to get the sirens on and get me to that hospital ASAP.
Absolutely, and Columbo is almost playing games with him at this point, even though he's getting a natural reaction.
Yeah. Fleming insists on seeing his wife.
So they head to the hospital, like you said.
She's critical.
Well, they won't let him see her.
Yeah, not straight away. He tries to use his authority with different people and wants to... He's a doctor himself, so he tries to speak to the...
Chief of Staff, he asks them to get in touch and they page him.
He then questions Columbo on any leads or clues that he has at the moment, but Columbo says nothing just now.
Nope.
That was a little bit like Jack Cassidy in Murder by the Book.
Little bit, except without all the theories.
Yeah.
Burt Gordon shows up.
Mm-hmm. Before that, Columbo some questions himself, but he has conveniently forgotten his pencil, and he mentions his wife here for the first time. He says that she's always giving him a pencil because he's always losing them.
Right.
So that's
I didn't even catch that.
First mention. This is at the point where Fleming says that he was at a remote village, which is why he couldn't be contacted. And he then tells him what happened on the plane. But of course, Columbo already has established that.
Yeah, I think he mentions that he's spoken to the stewardess.
Mm-hmm. Columbo says that he thinks that the wife was probably attacked around midnight because apparently she didn't come off the plane until about 10.
Right, that would tie in with the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Columbo then asks for him to make a note of any missing items from the apartment.
Yeah, that would be standard procedure, but it would be unusual for a homicide policeman to be making that request, I would have thought.
And then we have the very first one more thing. He actually says one more thing.
Yeah.
He had borrowed a photograph of his wife in order to show the stewardess.
Yeah, he hopes that's okay.
Mm.
But if it's not.
No, yeah. Fleming nervously asks, he sort of says, and Columbo says, yeah, she identified her positively.
Oh yes, because he's worried that they're going to pick out Joan. I didn't even imagine that's what he's worrying about. I was imagining him worrying about, why are you mentioning that?
Right.
That was how it came across.
And as you said, Burt arrives.
He does.
He consoles Fleming a little bit, and he is told what has happened.
He wants to have a say.
We've seen this a few times, haven't we, that you get this third party trying to tell Columbo what he must do and what he can't do and what he shouldn't do.
We've seen it a couple of times.
Buck up your ideas, don't harass them, do harass them, get results.
Absolutely. I think the first time I remember it was Death Lends a Hand with the husband of the victim.
Yeah.
Quite keen to push the investigation along.
Mm-hmm. Columbo mentions that he has a loose thread to Burt.
No, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about something.
What was that?
No, it's nothing important. It's Dr. Fleming. He didn't call to his wife when he came back to his apartment.
I don't follow you.
Oh, well, I was in the bedroom. I was checking some things, and I heard him open the front door, and he didn't say anything. Gee, it's funny how people are different, isn't it? Now you take myself when I come home from a trip. First thing I do is I say, honey, you here?
Exactly what is your point, Lieutenant?
Point? Oh, I wasn't making a point.
It sounded to me as if you were. You heard the man admit that he had an argument with his wife. He probably still had a chip on his shoulder this morning.
I was only...
Lieutenant, I have already told you that Dr. Fleming is a close personal friend of mine. Now, I hope he's not going to be annoyed by a lot of tactless remarks, especially at a time like this.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Gordon. I guess I shouldn't have mentioned it.
Dr. Farrell.
That reminded me of two. One that I can't bring to mind, and Negative Reaction was the other.
Mm-hmm.
There's one, I can't remember where it was. He's in a bigger house and he's saying the exact same thing. He never called out to his wife.
We'll get back to it.
Yeah, it'll come to mind.
So we got to the hospital room. An officer outside Carol's door tells Fleming and Columbo that they can't enter right now. The doctor is with her. She's conscious.
Yeah.
Fleming must be panicking at this point.
Well, you would think he's very anxious.
Well, he's this close. I'm lifting up my hand and making a very small...
6 inches.
That's about 8.
Okay.
Columbo notices that Fleming does not act very happy.
Yeah. I mean,
No,
Columbo is he's shrugged off the politics. He's not interested in that.
No.
He's just looking at people. And yeah, Fleming's reaction...
would expect to be overjoyed and trying to burst in through the door and demand to know what's happening, but I suppose we've discussed this before, he might be in a state of shock and not taking anything in. That is possible.
He might be used to hospital procedure and know that there's no point in trying to force anything. Because he didn't even force his way past the nurses on the desk when they wouldn't let him in.
However, the doctor exits with bad news.
Yeah.
She's passed away.
But she's named her killer.
She has. Fleming asks if she said anything, and the doctor says yes, she'll be pleased to know her last words were Raymond or Ray.
Why would you be pleased?
Yeah, well, she
was thinking about you, but she's dead.
Yeah. It's not that much of a comfort, really, is it?
No, not really.
Yeah.
You've lost someone who really loved you.
Yeah. Ray, we've got good news, we've got bad news.
And they don't balance in any way.
No. We go to the park for a short scene.
Yeah.
We see Fleming admire some art. Now again, there's some indiscriminate amount of time passed. We're not sure.
Yeah, I thought this was a funeral at first, and
so
then
did I, yeah.
It turned out it was an art and a broken mirror.
Yeah,
on
some
display.
sort of nonsense. Fleming is admiring some art, and he sees Columbo appear in this broken mirror.
Yeah. Columbo is then asked if he's made any progress.
Yep, he has no news, nothing.
They're waiting for the jewellery to be found.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like a very proactive approach, and I don't think it is what he's doing.
No. So we head to Fleming's office, and Columbo notices that as a psychiatrist, there is no couch there.
Yeah, it's not Freud.
No, bad for the posture, I think he says. And then he talks about his family, again, before returning the pen that he borrowed. That's apparently his reason for being there.
Yeah.
Columbo is another loose end. He's got a problem with the luggage that the Flemings took on board the plane and returned with.
Yeah, this is one where Ray's kind of undermined himself to some extent.
Yeah, so what's his problem?
The airport measures the weight of your luggage. Remember, we didn't mention it, so remember's the wrong word, but on their way out, the Flemings had to pay a surcharge for excess weight in their baggage.
As you do today?
As you do today, probably even more punitively.
Oh, yeah.
He was 13 pounds over, so that's like almost a stone overweight, which is a huge amount.
Yes.
To be overweight. When they left, but coming back, he was only 4 pounds over.
So where did the missing £9 go?
£9, which is a significant weight.
Yeah, and his answer is that he took trade journals with him to read and then disposed of them.
This is another moment that I noted gets used again in the series repeatedly, where Columbo uses this exact line, well, I guess that clears that up.
Yeah.
And it's his way of saying,
nope. Don't believe you, can't prove you're wrong at the moment, so we'll come back to it.
Filed for later.
Yeah.
They talk about what Carol was wearing on the flight.
Yes, and it's one more thing.
Yeah.
He describes the blue dress and the gloves. However, Columbo says that the dress and the gloves were not found in the apartment and it's been searched.
Fleming knows exactly where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
But he suggests maybe they were stolen.
By the thief, yeah.
Yeah. And he adds that people don't always act rationally, which is a reasonable point that people don't make enough on this show.
Yeah. And I think in 68, they couldn't understand, or Columbo couldn't understand why a thief might steal some women's clothing. I think more cynically today, there might be a different explanations which we will not go into. Who knows?
But they make an appointment for Columbo to come over at 5:30, so let's guess what time he's going to come over.
Yeah, it won't be 5:30, that's for sure. The secretary buzzes through to Fleming.
Yep.
About the next appointment. And then Columbo recalls that the person who called him at home on his return was booked in for this particular time.
That's right.
So do you think that Columbo has arranged to be at his office for this appointment, or do you think that was just a
Yes,
coincidence?
I think he wants to follow up on who was phoning the house.
Yeah. As he leaves, he bumps into Joan.
He stops her and asks her name.
Doesn't ID her. Asks who she is and then...
He doesn't say who he is. No.
Yeah. She gives him his name and then walks through to Fleming's office.
Yeah.
She's in a panic. They both appear actually quite anxious now, as Fleming tells her that it's Lieutenant Columbo. But again, he tries to reassure her that everything will be okay. He then goes to call the cleaners, but they discover that Joan had forgotten to put the gloves in with the dress, and they are still at her home. So Fleming tells her to bring them over that day. Go home, get the gloves and bring them to his apartment.
Yeah, they need a new plan. She suggests throwing them away, and I've noted, good plan.
Yes.
And he suggests bring them to his house where the police are.
Yes. Where we're probably being watched. We definitely know that a cop's coming at some point to talk to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he gives a reason. He says he wants the police to find them.
Yeah. He should have went to her apartment and picked him up if that's what he was going to do, or met her in a...
But even then, the idea that he would be able to hide them somewhere, and the police maybe just forgot to check that bit.
Well, that's it. What is the... Because he says that he found them somewhere in some area. But all the cops, all the cops would have to do is say, no, you didn't, because we definitely checked
Columbo
there.
says that.
Yeah.
We checked that bureau thoroughly.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll come to that in a moment, because we skip forward to Fleming's penthouse apartment, and the doorbell goes, and we assume it's some time before 5:30.
Yes. It's Joan. She has the gloves.
Yep.
She again needs reassurance
And a
about
drink.
Columbo, yeah. And a drink. So they both pour themselves each a drink, or he pours them both a drink.
Which could prove significant, because there's now 2 glasses of bourbon on the table.
As they talk, they hear a noise at the door. It's a key being scraped around.
Well, just before that, though, Ray comments on why Columbo's sniffing around.
Yes.
I've noted in this quote, he thinks Columbo's irritated because the death was too perfect.
Yes. That's often the case with Columbo.
It absolutely is. But he reassures Joan, like you say, by saying, we're in love, we want a future together, and that's all the justification we need.
After the noise at the door, Joan goes to hide in the bedroom.
Yes.
It's Columbo, apparently trying to save some time.
By breaking in.
By breaking in.
Does he not have a key?
Yeah, I think he was just trying to...
He couldn't get the key to work?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Fleming has to think quick.
Well, you wonder, how long was Columbo standing at the door before he tried to get in?
And can you hear through it?
Yeah. So you suspect he probably knows.
No, I'm not
He
sure.
may know.
If that was the case, he would simply say, look, I heard someone in here, and go and find Joan.
That's if he wants Ray to know that he knows.
Yeah, I suppose.
He's already got his radar fixed on Joan, because he's got her name and she phoned the house. So.
Yeah, true.
Anyway,
we don't know for Columbo's here to try and look for the gloves. The gloves are lying on a table somewhere.
Yeah.
So Fleming has to think quickly. He says, I come back early myself to do the same thing, save some time. Here are the gloves. I found them in the bureau.
Yep.
But as he's talking, Fleming himself notes the 2 drinks that he poured.
Yeah.
And he has to position himself to hide them.
He casually stands in front of them, whistles a merry tune, and
Yeah.
then dumps one of them into the ice bucket.
Okay. Fleming says he hasn't found the dress, and Columbo goes to look, so he insists on having a second look, and Joan has to hide in a wardrobe as Columbo's about to enter the bedroom. But just then the doorbell goes. Fleming asks Columbo to answer it because he can't be bothered talking to anyone, and it is who?
It's the cleaners returning the dress and some other things. Not very many other things for the size of the bag that was taken away, but
Yeah, that is true.
there's
I
just
think it
that
was
dress in a
just the-
box.
Yeah. Convenient.
Yeah.
Columbo, I think, apologises at this point for making a pest of himself, he says.
Yeah, I mean, he's said a couple of little sly things. I mean, earlier, it was this scene where earlier he said, we did check that bureau thoroughly. Mm-hmm. But now he's saying, I'm sorry for being a pest, Mm-hmm. This was obviously a fair sort of explanation for where the dress might have been. It's clearly been cleaned.
Yep. For the first time, the phone rings and it's for Columbo. We've commented on this on many occasions. His bosses always know where he is, and I suppose it's fair enough.
He lets them know. I think he said in an earlier scene, actually, that might be for me. I've let them know I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, maybe when Joan phones.
Yep. Who, or what is this phone call about?
Oh, it's the police station. Someone's confessed to killing Carol. Presumably Columbo set this up.
You think?
I'm pretty certain.
Okay. No, I'm not sure. Because what Columbo says at the end of the scene about how he's already asked him if he... We'll get to that.
Yeah, certainly Columbo wants Fleming to be involved.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe worth noting, at this point we talked earlier about time-lapse.
Mm-hmm.
You said an indeterminate amount of time had passed before we got to the park.
Yeah.
And it was the day Ray was starting back at work.
Mm-hmm.
So some time has passed. But the cleaning's just coming back. So how long does it take for dry cleaning to be done? Or for cleaning to be done?
Well...
Because if it's less than overnight, or if it's more than overnight, then how does Columbo know the dress wasn't just put in by Ray after he got back?
Well, he can ask the cleaners, can't he?
I suppose they can say they collected it on a particular date.
Yeah. So we go to the police interview room, and a chap called Tommy is describing his supposed crime, and Fleming is in the room with him. Now, surely, if you're in Fleming's position...
Why is he in the room?
Exactly. Now, we know why Columbo might want him in there to hear this tale and story.
Surely there's protocols to follow here.
But Fleming must surely be thinking, why has he got me in here? I shouldn't be in here. This is ridiculous.
For a start, I don't want to hear what happened.
No, and secondly, yeah, I might, if is that the killer of my wife? I might just attack, I might stab, I might grab a pen from the table. I've got a pen in my own pocket. I might kill him.
It's a strange one.
There's only one other cop in the room. I think there's Columbo. Well, another cop leads Tommy out.
Yeah.
We'll get to him in a second.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He gives a full confession and he's led away. There's a good point that Tommy makes. He says he worked out which flat or which house they were in. He saw them leaving and read RF on the suitcase and it matched the name on the board of the penthouse. That obviously wouldn't work nowadays.
No.
Because there's so many folk with Roger Federer branded apparel.
Yeah. Very good.
Anyway.
Fleming tells Columbo that he doesn't believe Tommy.
Yeah, it says he seems neurotic.
Mm-hmm. And all the details were available in the papers.
Yeah, except for ones that aren't true.
Yeah. Like the RF.
He doesn't have it in his bag.
And then we have he talks about the strangulation.
It's a strange one.
He says the description of the strangulation it was wrong.
Yes, because she was strangled from behind, so the thumbs would have been on the back of her neck, not the front.
Yeah.
And Tommy described strangling her face on.
Did he?
Yes. And Columbo also... Yes, that's how Columbo knows Tommy was lying.
Yes.
He explains to Fleming that's how he knows. But Fleming at this point he's a bit unhappy with Columbo.
Mm-hmm.
He's a bit put out. I think he suggests at this point Columbo may have set this all up to test his reaction.
We then have that moment where both parties understand what's going on, who thinks what.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very clear to Fleming that this whole charade was testing him and nothing to do with the guy that was confessing.
Yes. And as he goes to leave, Columbo asks him about the fishing trip he went on.
He does.
Let's hear what he says.
Oh, that reminds me. Did you do any fishing while you were in Acapulco?
A little? Why?
Oh, it's nothing important. It's just that I'm a terrific bug on fishing. You know, my wife and I were looking for a place to take a vacation this summer. You see, the trouble with places around here is that, people keep dumping all kinds of things off the boat. You know, bottles, cans. Oh, it's a terrible shame. Criminal. And, I suppose you don't notice that in the ocean, do you? I mean, so big, you just swallow everything up. Tell me, those trade journals and those medical books, did you take them with you when you went fishing?
Lieutenant, for the past week, you've been asking me some rather pointless questions, and I am getting very tired of them.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doc. I just thought that, a boat's a good place to get some reading done.
What do my reading habits have to do with this? You've been concentrating on everything but the man who broke into my apartment? Or is this some new type of police procedure?
I'm only,
I want the man who murdered my wife. Everything else is irrelevant.
Well, I'm only trying to...
I know, you're only trying to tie up loose ends. Well, if you spent a little less time on loose ends, maybe you'd come up with something important.
Fleming makes a bold play here and raises two possibilities. That Columbo thinks he killed his own wife or paid someone to do it.
But Columbo says no.
Well, he kind of dodges it, doesn't he?
Well, Fleming says that perhaps he thinks that he paid Tommy to kill the wife.
Yeah, Columbo's ruled Tommy out, though.
And he says, why? Columbo says he's already asked him.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk quickly about two actors in this scene.
Okay.
Well, one actor really and one extra, uncredited.
Okay.
Anthony James played Tommy. He was born in 1942. And I've seen him in quite a lot of things. He always plays that sort of intense, sleazy bad guy. He plays it very well. He's been in The Heat of the Night, Naked Gun 2.5, Unforgiven, Star Trek Next Generation, The A-Team, Sledgehammer, Quincy and Ironside. Lots and lots of other things. After being in The Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood movie in 92, I think,
right,
he quit acting and he is now an artist.
There you go.
Yep, there we go.
Hopefully he'll have a nice art-based website for the show notes.
He does.
Excellent. That saves me a little bit of effort.
The other person who I want to talk about, I think, is in this scene, is the cop who leads him out.
Okay.
He's uncredited, but it's a Mark Russell. And the reason I want to mention him is that he was born in Glasgow in 1933. He was in 104 episodes of Kojak as Detective Saperstein. He was also in Quincy, Cannon, MacLeod. And he was an uncredited cop in Death Lends a Hand and Murder by the Book. In fact, I think Death Lends a Hand, he was an uncredited investigator in the Brimmer Agency.
Right.
He also appeared in Season 2, Episode 1 of Star Trek, Amok Time.
It's a famous episode.
Is it? You can tell me about that later.
I'll not spoil anything for people who like to find out about Star Trek in a different way.
We then have a very quick scene, a very short scene on the street.
I think it's outside the court, maybe.
Is it? What happens?
Fleming and Bert are strolling, whistling a merry tune.
Mm-hmm.
But Fleming is complaining about Columbo and he wants to know if Bert can pull a few strings. He says he can.
Yeah.
And Fleming says, that was painless. Looks like I owe you a favour. Essentially, Bert's going to do his best to get Columbo off his back.
Yeah.
And we've seen that before as well, haven't we?
We have.
Or after.
Yeah, a few times. We then go to the longest scene in the episode, and there are actually a lot of fantastic lines of dialogue. There's so many clips I could have pulled out from this one
It's
particular
6 clips
scene.
in this scene.
Yeah.
Let's just play the scene.
We should just play the whole thing. It's actually brilliant. Columbo is in the waiting room as Fleming leaves for the night.
Yeah, obviously Fleming was expecting not to see Columbo again
Yes.
after Bert pulled the strings, but
Oh, he's-
immediately he's there.
He has unexpectedly been taken off the case, this is what he tells Fleming, and replaced by a less experienced cop.
Yeah, he pushes Fleming a bit in relation to Gordon, and then he makes a weird request
Which is,
to be taken on as a patient so he can learn how to stop bothering people.
he says it makes people uneasy because he's too suspicious.
This is all, knowing that he's not actually off the case, this is all very sort of passive-aggressive stuff here.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
You can sense that Columbo really dislikes Fleming.
I should say just prior to that as well, you mentioned that he pushes him on Gordon, but he also says that perhaps he's on his way to see a lady friend.
He does, yes, he says that as well.
Which is quite impertinent.
I think the time for niceties has passed from Columbo's perspective.
Fleming again says he's going to talk to his superiors, and Columbo notes that he's been talking an awful lot to different people recently.
Yeah.
So Fleming tries a different approach.
Columbo, you are magnificent. You really are.
Well, what makes you say that, Doc?
You're the most persistent creature I've ever met. But likable. The astonishing thing is you're likable. Has anyone ever told you you're droll?
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Oh, come on, Doc. Come on.
Oh, but you are. You're a sly little elf, and you should be sitting under your own private little toadstool. You say you've been thrown off the case, and yet you have the flagrant audacity to come back here and bother me again. I respect that. It irritates me, but I respect it. How about a drink?
Well, all right.
They share a bourbon.
They do. Fleming predicts that Columbo is a bourbon drinker.
Yeah, and then he produces a bar that I want in my office.
Yeah. Or your house.
Anywhere.
Columbo then asks if Fleming likes to read. He looks at his bookshelf and he says, what about murder mysteries?
Yeah, they're having an interesting conversation here about, firstly, Columbo's character.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go on to talk about the character of a murderer.
They do. With regards to the murder mysteries, Columbo says that they both know that the books aren't like real life.
They always catch the guy.
Yeah. And at this point, Fleming says, he gets exasperated again. He says, Columbo, you never stop. And I have to throw in another clip here.
Yeah, just before we do that, it's all very reminiscent of Ransom for a Dead Man. This is stuff that they use. And I think they have to almost use this type of exposition to flesh out Columbo to explain this is what he's like.
Yes. It's for our benefit.
Yeah.
You never stop, do you?
What?
The insinuation, the change of pace. You're a bag of tricks, Columbo, right down to that prop cigar you use.
Oh, come on, Doc.
I'm going to tell you something about yourself. You say you need a psychiatrist. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But you are the textbook example of compensation.
Of what, Doc?
Compensation, adaptability. You're an intelligent man, Columbo, but you hide it. You pretend you're something you're not. Why? Because of your appearance. You think you cannot get by on looks or polish. So you turn a defect into a virtue. You take people by surprise. They underestimate you, and that's where you trip them up. Like coming here tonight.
A fantastic summary of Columbo's character and his MO.
I'd say almost as good as the one that we got in Ransom.
Yeah. So after this, Columbo then wants to discuss a hypothetical murderer.
Yeah.
Who plans things in advance, not a hothead.
No. If you were to have killed your wife,
Yes.
how would you have done it?
Fleming tells him that it would be a professional, orderly man with courage.
Eye for detail and with courage. But that killing is not necessarily a sign of insanity.
No, it would be a pragmatic solution to a problem that he has.
Essentially, he's been given the opportunity here by Columbo to confess without confessing,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Columbo then asks him how he would go about catching that type of a man.
You don't.
Precisely.
That's more wishful thinking, I think.
Yeah.
And then he comes out with this line, which is just bizarre. If I killed my wife, you're never going to be able to prove it.
Yeah, you couldn't prove it. That's what it's... So effectively, he is saying to him, I have done this, but it's a bit of a try and catch me, isn't it?
It's essentially, they're playing games. A little bit of head-to-head.
Mm-hmm. Columbo says that cops aren't the smartest people, but what they do have in their favour is that they are pros. So they do this 100 times per year. The killer, on the other hand, may be smarter, but this is his first go.
Yep.
So the experience should outweigh the expertise. Or the experience should outweigh the...
intelligence, maybe, yeah.
Did you like Dr. Ray Fleming?
I did very much.
He was great, wasn't he?
Fantastic killer.
He was played by Gene Barry, who died in 2009, aged 90. Most famous for roles in Burke's Law, Bat Masterson, War of the Worlds, The Adventurer. He was also in Murder, She Wrote. He won a Golden Globe for his role in Burke's Law, and he himself has a star on the Walk of Fame and had a Tony nomination in 1984. You might be interested in this, Ian. He was a very avid political activist, and he was with Robert Kennedy when he was assassinated.
The ambassador in Los Angeles,
Yep,
68.
He was at that event.
Son to Chicago.
There's quite a few JFK
Let's
connections,
win there.
isn't there? Is that what he said?
So Kennedy said at the end of his speech.
Yep. Well,
He didn't go to Chicago.
no, and he didn't win.
He didn't win.
No.
Sadly. Anyway, they move. Fleming leaves and Columbo stays behind.
Yes, he's quite, at this point, he's very confident and he's quite full of himself. Sort of says, you won't catch me, feel free to snoop around here, have a few drinks and turn the lights out when you leave.
Yeah.
Which Columbo does. He stops back.
But he does that and then I thought he was thinking, how come the light was out when I... But no, because that wasn't really a plot point in this one. That was more old-fashioned murder.
Yes.
We did see Fleming make a point of turning the light out after he killed her and they left.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought maybe it would mean something, but it didn't come up.
We head to the studio lot. Columbo's enjoying a popsicle, is that what they're
Some kind
called?
of ice lily, yeah.
He's waiting for Joan. He wants to talk to her. And he has a briefcase for his files, so this isn't a trope. In future, he pulls out crumpled bits of paper from all his pockets. That's Columbo. But in this episode,
He's not wearing the raincoat. Is
not wearing the raincoat, and he's got a briefcase with all the information he needs.
He doesn't have enough pockets, that's what's going on. He's got lots of questions for her, and she surmises that Fleming's maybe in trouble.
Yes. The other non-trope here, and I think it may be the only time he does it, is he asks her if it's okay if he smokes. Some women don't like smoke in their face.
There you go.
But I've seen on many occasions, especially with Murder Under Glass, when he turns up at the dinner party, he just blows smoke in.
But I think that you wonder how much of that is for a reason and how much of it is just rudeness.
Sure. Columbo wants to know how long that she has known Fleming. And she says she's been a patient for a year.
Yep, she's got her lines down.
Mm-hmm.
Like a good actress.
Yes. He then tells her he thinks that Fleming killed his wife, and she's stunned.
She tries to leave, but Columbo insists she sits down and then she makes a critical error.
Columbo makes her sit down and he produces Carol's sunglasses.
Yeah.
I think this is to unsettle and unnerve her.
Yeah, and it works because she drops a clanger.
Which is?
She says, "You're not on the case."
Mm-hmm. And how would she know that? She's in a pickle, isn't she?
Absolutely. And then she starts asking for her lawyer.
Yes.
And my note is she should have certainly been allowed a lawyer before any more questions were asked.
Yeah, it's a little bit, he's trying to get her to talk without legal representation.
This is why you get her allowed to have a lawyer.
Yes.
This is the exact scenario.
Columbo eventually says, yep, fine, call your lawyer, tell him you're being, or with regards to you being an accessory to murder.
Yep, he's going to take her to see the stewardess to see if the stewardess can identify her.
This is again, he's just applying pressure to someone who knows he's quite fragile here.
He puts it on really heavily. She's wilting is the note that I've got, and he starts to yell at her.
It's quite severe. I mean, I enjoyed watching it, and we've seen Columbo do this before, where he does.
He gives it to her really hard, and she's screaming for him to stop.
Okay. But in a remarkable turnaround,
Yeah.
after this, she regains her composure.
Yes, it is. It's like she gathers herself out of nothing.
She denies any involvement.
That's it, and he has to let her go.
Well, she says that, charge me or let me go.
But
She can't
he's
prove anything.
got one last thing to say to her.
Yes. Which is?
He's threatening her. He says he'll break her down.
Let's hear.
Okay.
Miss Hudson, I hope you understand that this is only the beginning. In a way, I feel sorry for you because from now on, I'm going to do everything I can to break you down. Do you understand? Dr. Fleming made one mistake and you're it. You're the weak link, Miss Hudson. Now, you surprised me today because you were strong. But there's always tomorrow. And the day after that. And the day after that. And sooner or later, you're going to talk to me. Until you do, you're going to be questioned. You're going to be followed. And you're going to be hounded. And Dr. Fleming can't do anything about it. You're on your own, Miss Hudson. And I'm going to get to him through you. That's a promise.
If you heard that clip in isolation, you would not pick Columbo as the good guy in this story.
No, if you read, definitely not. And if you read that in a script on the page and asked someone to tell you which TV cop had said it, I don't think many people would have thought Columbo would. I don't think many people would have put Columbo to the top of their list.
No, and he doesn't stop there because he continues to act in this sort of hyper-aggressive manner even once she leaves the area.
Well, we see him having cops tail her, making her very aware that
it's not subtle, is it, the way that they tail her?
it's not meant to be
They
subtle.
just drive behind her.
Yes, this is overt pressure here. While we're here, we'll talk about the actress who played Joan.
Did a very good job.
Yeah. Her name was Catherine Justice. She was born in 1942. She has been in Five Card Stud, The Way West, Falcon Crest, T.J. Hooker, Quincy and Cannon. But really, I don't think she established herself as...
She never quite made that leap into sort of starring roles, or...
Very fine performance.
But she did a very good job with the material.
So we move on to Joan's apartment, and she's under pressure. There's a great score here. It creates a lot of tension. She's pacing, and she notes the police cars outside.
Well, she looks out the window and they shine a light over at her.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, we're watching.
She calls Fleming in a panic. Now this is odd again, but this goes back to the what information can they get from telephone calls?
Yeah.
You would have to assume that level of sort of paranoia, certainly today, that these phones may well be bugged.
I would have thought. From what she says, it sounds like she's been trying to get hold of him for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And all he says is he's not going to visit her with the police there, and she's to keep her appointment the next day.
Of course. Does she honestly expect him to turn up? Where she's saying, look, Ray, there are lots of cop cars out here. Can you come and help me?
It becomes apparent, I think, that the police know what is said in this conversation.
Yes.
She says to him, oh no, he says to her, he knows that she's his last resort and she needs to stay strong. Oh, she's Columbo's last resort.
Yep.
She needs to stay strong and he'll have nothing.
Yes. It's the next morning and we're in Fleming's office, and he notes that Joan has missed her 10 a.m. appointment, so he tells his secretary to give her a call.
This must be the most sort of ominous response you could get to that query.
Yeah.
I phoned her, but the coroner picked up.
Yeah. Really, the coroner!
I wonder what's happened there.
Yeah. So he makes her call again, and
It's still the coroner.
it's still a coroner. He picks up the phone, tries to explain that he is her psychiatrist, but I suppose we don't really hear the other side of the conversation, but he's told he has to, or he should turn up at
Or contact the police for information or
whatever,
whatever. He's heading out.
Mm-hmm. Virginia Gregg played Miss Petrie, who was Fleming's secretary.
Okay.
And she was an uncredited voice in the Psycho movies, playing Norma Bates, as was Jeanette Nolan, who played Mrs. Peck, and more recently she played Kate O'Connell.
Okay. Was that the movie that Janet Leigh was in?
Yes.
Another connection?
Yeah. Fleming obviously decides to go to Joan's apartment.
Yep, we get to another questionably unethical police manoeuvre.
Which is?
They faked Joan's death.
Well, we don't know at this point. Let's talk it through as if we didn't
Okay.
know. So he arrives and Columbo's drinking a coffee.
Yeah.
Doesn't really say anything but nods towards the poolside area.
Yeah.
And what happens?
He sees a dead woman conveniently being put on a stretcher just as he arrives.
Mm-hmm.
And is told by Columbo she stuffed herself full of barbiturates.
She overdosed. Columbo then claims that he didn't think that she would react so badly to the pressure that he was putting her under.
Yeah, the quote he gives is, "We both killed that girl, the two of us together."
Mm-hmm. But she killed herself to protect you. So he's making Fleming, or trying to make Fleming appear that he owes her something.
Well, he's already established from their previous encounter that Fleming can be manipulated into saying more than he thinks he's saying.
Yes.
So he's feeding him lines here. Essentially, he is manipulating him into saying particular things about the scenario. So he says, he congratulates Fleming on getting away with it.
He is free and clear, he says.
Yeah, but he points out that he's going to be a terribly lonely man from here on in because the woman he loved is dead.
Yes. Columbo actually says, "You won, Doc."
And then says, "Do you want to confess?"
Yeah, it's an odd thing to... It's an odd way of doing it, to be honest. I'm not entirely convinced that
Well,
this would
that might
work.
be a nod to the play,
Yeah, of course.
which you talked about earlier, where they've got a different ending.
Yeah,
And maybe they felt that didn't work on film.
yeah, quite possibly.
I noted here, actually, there's a great view from this apartment.
Yeah, it was a fantastic view. Anyway,
yeah.
Columbo asks him to confess because he apparently must have loved this girl and she did this for him, so due to this supposed or expected remorse, maybe he wants to clear things off his chest.
Yeah.
Fleming doesn't have that attitude.
No.
Let's hear what he says.
You're a very funny man,
I wasn't trying to be funny.
but you are more than you know. So, you want me to purge myself? My one and only love is dead and I have nothing more to live for, is that it?
All I'm saying, Doctor, is that if you love that girl,
Love that girl? Look, Columbo, I overestimated you. I thought you understood about human nature. I never loved that girl.
come on, Doc.
No, really. Remember that hypothetical murderer we were talking about? He needed an alibi. The girl was available, so he used her. It was as simple as that.
No. You killed your wife because you were in love with the girl.
Well, if I killed Carol and there's no proof that I did it for myself, not for some dime a dozen little actress.
She helped you with the murder. You'd have had to marry her.
Not really. Something would have been arranged. Like an accident, maybe?
Always planning ahead, aren't you, Ray?
That little bit of music at the end there after she comes back in reminded me a lot, you won't know, of the original Star Trek series. They used that type of, music as an exclamation point
Yeah.
quite a lot, and it's that sort of thing.
Did they not do it in Batman as well? Sort of. But
Kinda,
a little bit
yeah.
more.
It was, it wasn't quite the same, but that was what that reminded me of there. I liked this ending.
Yes.
I did. I liked it. She's also going to turn on him.
So are we... Okay, so what's happened is that it was a body double in the...
Well, he looks over and he
Yeah.
sees the woman on the stretcher gets up and it's an actress. It's exactly the same thing that he did.
Yes. No, it was very smart, wasn't it? It was nice.
It was completely unethical, but brilliant.
Yeah. And you can only imagine what it must have been like back in 1968. I mean, obviously, you're very aware of Columbo now, and we're far more aware of just through the amount of TV shows and killings and murders we've seen, and everything really has been done before. But back then, this must have been really, really original.
Yeah.
Really fresh.
It's not really a surprise that it went on to be Revive.
Yeah. Are we to assume that Joan has agreed some sort of immunity?
I would imagine she doesn't even care.
Really?
If he doesn't love her, then what's the point?
Well,
Although that would make her quite a weak female character, wouldn't it?
yeah. And why...
Maybe then.
Yeah.
Because she has shown surprising strength. Previously, when Columbo was really
Yeah.
trying to hammer her, she stood up to him. Because at the end of the day, she wasn't involved in the killing. She was only involved in the cover-up. So her crime...
Still
is-
accessory.
Maybe...
Yeah, it was part of you planned it.
Maybe
She had no-
she might well get off with a charge of obstructing the course of
No.
justice.
Because the for the murder to work, she had to be involved. She was dressing up as her and going. It wasn't just that she was aware of it or tried to obstruct it afterwards. She was actively involved in him. She knew it was happening beforehand, and then she dressed as the wife and allowed him to try and get away.
But it could be that that's the deal she's come to with the police.
Yeah, possibly.
We'll do you for obstruction if you give evidence again.
Possibly.
I think that would be fairly standard to give evidence in exchange for.
Yeah, sure.
Because without her evidence, they still don't have a case.
No. And we see Fleming, he knows he's been beat. He smokes a cigarette and stares out.
Yeah, he gets the finale.
Yeah. So, there we have it, Ian. The very first Peter Falk Columbo.
What I wrote down was, this is presumably a well-loved show. This TV movie. I was surprised to hear you say when I spoke to you earlier that it's not, and you said on the podcast, it's not one that you've watched repeatedly, because it does seem like a very good episode.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think it is just the fact that, one, it's not on TV that often.
Yeah.
And because it is just logistically as well, it's always sort of stuck away in an extra, pilot case somewhere with other ones. It's not on Netflix. Yeah, you just sort of miss it a lot of the time. And I'm glad I've watched this again and paid more attention to it, because it's, I was surprised. If you remember, I said that the Bye Bye IQ murder had dropped down my sort of personal rankings. I am confident that this one has surged up them.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's certainly in my top 10, maybe even pushing, who knows, top 6.
Oof, not the top 6.
Could do.
Hallowed top 6.
Hallowed, the well-known top 6 Columbo episodes. But no, I really enjoyed it.
It would be good to know other people's impressions, especially if anyone has gone out and watched this for the first time in a long time to go with the podcast. How well it matched up to their recollection and where it maybe slots in their list. Because I don't think I've seen it in anyone's top 10s. People post a lot of top 10s in the forums.
Sure. Well, hopefully a lot of people are sort of rewatching, following the podcast and rewatching the episodes. So this might be a good time to revisit.
Absolutely. Also a good time to petition Netflix to get the revival episodes up.
Yeah, that would be good. Listen, this is a podcast which is running a lot longer than normal. So we've still got some production information, a little bit of trivia, and the episode review to get through.
Rapid fire.
But we go through it quite quickly.
Boom, boom, boom.
Production info. February 1968. That's the only information I have on IMDb. 100 minutes, although I think it's a little bit longer. I think it's about 103 on Netflix it was.
Okay.
Richard Irving was the director, and he also directed Ransom for a Dead Man. So we've spoken about him. And Link and Levinson were obviously the writers. And we have and will in the future speak more about them. In terms of the cast, did I mention William Wyndham?
You did not.
He was Bert.
Okay.
Recognise him?
It's a familiar name.
Yeah. We saw him in Short Fuse. He also played the lawyer. Everett Logan.
Right.
Family.
That will be where I remember it from.
Yeah, he was in a lot of Murder, She Wrote as well. This is the first time we hear a one more thing, so it might be worth quickly mentioning the origins of that. Actually, it was down to laziness on the writer's behalf. What happened was that they'd written some scenes, then decided that they wanted Columbo to ask some further questions. Rather than rewrite and bring it all back in, they had him just re-enter with a one more thing.
And it became a technique.
Yeah.
That's quite a poor way for that to have come about.
Yes. Let's move on to the episode review.
Okay.
Motive.
I think primarily it was to escape the marriage without the loss of reputation.
Clues. Fleming's initial response when he turned up. The different reactions to the wife's different state of being alive. The question after she dies, i.e. what did she say? The suitcase weight discrepancy. The discovery of his relationship with Joan. Him finding the gloves. The fact that he stated that Columbo could not prove anything. What else?
Well, I think once you get to that point,
Yeah.
he's said so much, it's not really even evidence anymore as so much as confession.
Yes,
Without-
well, he didn't have any evidence. He had to rely on this setup
Yeah.
at the end. So he knew, but he couldn't prove.
Yeah, I mean, the big one was, I think, the weight of the luggage. That was the...
Yeah, although I'm not entirely
heavy one,
convinced.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
that wouldn't have stood up in court, that.
No, but I think that would be what pushed Columbo most strongly towards Fleming.
I would disagree. I think it's the initial reaction would be the biggest one, where you walk in and don't see anything or do anything.
See, I think Bert's cover for that was fine. He literally, the last time we saw her, they were yelling and screaming at each other. He might not want to talk to her.
Yes, but when he walked in and he saw the chalk outline or the outline of the body, he didn't really do anything. At that point,
Yeah, and Columbo isn't in no way searching in the bedroom for something. He's obviously observing.
Yeah, and then the gloves appearing after, you know.
Yeah.
So there we have it. Gotcha.
Love the gotcha. Basically, give him a taste of his own medicine.
Yep. John's going to spill the beans here.
Yeah.
Well, there we have it, Ian.
Yep.
Overall, good one, yeah.
Definitely.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to jump over 2 decades to 1989. And we have Columbo Goes to the Guillotine.
Interesting that they've changed the naming convention.
Uh-huh.
Not that there were conventions, but now there seem to be.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've heard. I mean, I've not seen all the titles, but there seems to be quite a lot of Columbo does something.
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to it.
I'm intrigued.
To see how they handle a 11-year gap.
Yeah. I've obviously now seen everything up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not working with gaps, so it'll be fun. I hope it'll be fun.
It will be fun. It certainly will be. I think even for us in the podcast, if it's a bad episode, it'll give us something to get our teeth into.
I just hope he doesn't become a caricature of himself or like an exaggerated trope machine. We'll find out.
We will. We'll find out, indeed. Okay. I think that's us then. Thank you to everyone, as usual, for the downloads, the response, the feedback. We really, really do appreciate it.
Yeah, we've had some great, very lovely reviews on iTunes and elsewhere recently. It's been very much appreciated. Please keep them coming. They do help others find the show, which is only making the community bigger. Keep contributing on columbopodcast.com and find us on Twitter at Columbo Podcast or Facebook. And we love hearing from you, so please do keep it up.
Okay, that's us. Cheerio.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to the Columbo Podcast from Heard Yet Media.